Hi, I'm Mary Wing Soares, and this is another episode of Transparency in Government. With me today is Scott LaLiberty, our school superintendent. Thank you again for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we've just gone through the deliberative session, all the budget meetings and everything else. So it was interesting that the item that got the most discussion, well, there were two items that got the most discussion. One was the technology infrastructure warrant article that will allow us to establish a trust fund. Right. And then the other one was giving up the school building next to the town hall.
Right.
So why don't we talk about the first one, the technology, why that's important, no matter what the amount is, why that's important that we get that established.
In that, I think you bring us in at a key point. I think for a lot of us, we felt like the town has exhibited a lot of wisdom and fiscal prudence over the years by establishing these capital reserve funds to be able to flatten out expenditures on a lot of these issues, a lot of these things like equipment or building and grounds and maintenance projects. For example, in a lot of districts where they don't have a fund like that, those line items in a budget will fluctuate tremendously, as in the amount would be included in the actual budget itself. Londonderry has been very wise over the years in establishing these funds, and those funds, they come from, many of them come from fund balance from the previous year.
Right.
But it does help us to predict a little bit with a little more reliability. We felt like it was a natural next step because we do have significant needs in our infrastructure. As far as, we are doing some work as far as what we would prioritize and what we would present when any projects that would be done with funds from that particular capital reserve would obviously go out to bid. And we've had some questions about that. They would be approved by the school board. The most important piece to us initially was to present the concept that we really feel like it's important to establish this fund with whatever amount the town felt was most appropriate for them.
And it hasn't been that many years that the school district has been allowed to establish these funds.
Yes,
these,
that's what I understand.
Savings accounts, or as we call them, because they really are savings accounts. It's not any different than somebody knowing that they're going to have to replace their roof in 3 years, so they start saving a little bit every single year in order for it not to be a big bite when it's due.
Yes.
But we have been not ignoring, because we've been putting our money into our technology money into other things, but we do need desperately to work on the infrastructure of our high school, middle school, and then elementary schools. Although the elementary schools that are the places that are newer might have the kinds of cable that you need. I don't know for sure, but the middle school and the high school are the oldest, well, except for Matthew Thornton. I think that nobody will ever take their, their crown away. But
another piece of that, a lot of the software that we use now that comes to us, whether it be through some of our assessments like iReady or College Board's coming up, or even some of the materials that we have to supplement textbooks. And, I mean, it's certainly my childhood, it was a workbook. Now we don't have that as much anymore. It's all web-based. And that's software that doesn't live on our computers. We buy licenses through textbook companies and through assessment companies. We need to be able to access the internet to be able to do that. So what you see is an increase in traffic, so over the same network within the building in the course of a day. Some of the lessons that may have videos attached with them or that sort of a thing, where it's really eating up a lot of bandwidth and it requires some processing speed. So that's why, as I said, we're kind of taking a two-pronged approach. We really would like to see the establishment of this fund, as you say, the savings account, but we're also committing a good share of our replacement budget this year to establishing a rotation cycle
Mm-hmm.
for the hardware,
Right.
for computers that students use each day.
Right.
Right now, as it happens, most of the time they break, and then
Sure.
we replace them. That's not always the most prudent way to do that. But we feel like a rotation would allow us to plan out and again level out
Right.
the cost.
So one of the comments that was made at the deliberative session was whether or not, when you know that you're going to upgrade your technology,
Mhm.
if you auction off the old technology, could that
Yeah.
money go towards it?
Yeah, there's a really interesting suggestion.
Right.
And I think a lot of the work that we've been doing has been on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were looking at the age and the use of computers, and we're trying to look at, processing speeds and how it works with different software packages. I hadn't really gone down that road yet, and I
Mhm.
thought it was a really good suggestion.
Right.
I know there are districts who do it, and there might be folks in the community who might not need the kind of processing speed or memory that could certainly put it to good use.
Sure. So the other Warrant article that got a lot of discussion was the release of the town from their
Yes.
obligation to allow us to have the school district building right next to, on the town land.
Right, right.
And I think the consensus was, after discussion,
Mhm.
that they understood that it didn't mean that we could never go back to the center of town.
Right.
That if there was land available, town land available, we could definitely build
Right.
there.
Right.
But I know that, and I know that the school district has some ideas for where they might put the school district office in the future. You have a 10-year lease, but your lease can be broken.
Correct, right.
And you also, there's just so many things that are playing with the school district right now.
Yes.
The increase of capacity need
Mhm.
in our schools,
Mhm.
regardless of the fact that there's fewer students in town, there
Yeah.
are higher needs for those students, which takes up
Right.
more room.
I think it's one of the things that we have to acknowledge in the discussion. If it were strictly a matter of the number of students went down and so the space needs went down, that it would be much simpler, and certainly my job would be a lot easier because we would be filling up empty classrooms.
Mhm.
We know that's not the case. If you go back to 2008, when the overall enrollment was declining from 2002 to 2008, it was when we started to see some steep decline. The district brought in the self-contained special education programs.
Mhm.
In 2008, we had 21 students in those self-contained programs. Previous to that, a lot of those students used to be transported by bus to other communities where we paid tuition for them to attend programs at
Right.
other schools. I think it was a fantastic use of the space, and because the town, in essence, said, we're going to bring our children home. They're going to go to school here in our communities. They had the space, they had the capacity because of the declining enrollment. So those programs were developed. That realizes a tremendous savings, and people forget that sometimes. We calculate it every year. This is,
Right.
Thank you, Nate Greenberg. He was so detail-oriented and insisted that every year as a part of the budget process that our pupil services staff calculated the differential between what it would cost us to send students to other districts for these services versus what we have here. In the current FY19 budget, that savings is over $10 million.
Now, is it $10 million for the 1 year or over for the whole
For the
life
1
of
year.
the, for 1 year, we've saved $10 million?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So that savings of $10 million could build another school.
Yeah, I mean, if, as a point of comparison, it would put a very nice addition on,
Right.
on
Well,
Lewis Hill.
The reason that I bring it up is because I work at the middle school, and I
Yes.
know that as the enrollment declined and the programs were brought back into the schools,
Mhm.
it filled up all of the space that was used for, like, for example, the fourth team
Mhm.
at
Right.
the middle school. And in the elementary schools, it allowed the music teachers to have a space so they weren't on a
Correct.
cart going from classroom to classroom. It allowed the reading teachers to have a space so that they were not going from room to room to room. And it allowed the art teacher to have rooms, to have
And
their own classrooms.
It allowed Matthew Thornton to have a cafeteria.
The,
If you'll remember, the cafeteria was, at one point, was divided into 4 classrooms.
well, at South School it was as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus the gym. I
Right.
mean, they had classes in the gym.
Yeah, when we were at that 5,700 student marker, you know, we were well over capacity.
Right.
For what we had, and I think that happened because if you look at the rapid growth that took place in this community from the early 90s until 2002.
Right. Well, and that's why the additions got put on South School and on North School.
Yes.
And I don't think there were any additions for Matthew Thornton. There's just been a lot of upgrading for Matthew Thornton to keep it, you know.
Yeah, there were some classrooms that were added here and there, but
Okay.
but now we're at a point where all 3 of them are built out.
Right. And I know that
Right.
with,
Or I should correct myself. South School does have footings
right,
for 2 extra classrooms.
right, they
I
do.
want to make sure it
Yes,
was
they
accurate
do.
there.
And that would be, you know, a possibility, but
Mm-hmm.
people are not moving into the south part of town, they're moving into the north and the middle part of town.
Right.
So, you know, we have to see how that goes in the future, but
Yeah.
everybody that lives in the town goes to Moose Hill, or all of the kindergarten kids come to Moose Hill.
Correct.
That go to Moose Hill, you know what I'm saying? It's not like there's 2 kindergartens. There's only 1 kindergarten, and there's only 1 middle school, and there's only 1 high school.
Mhm.
So the middle school right now is above capacity because of the special, you know, the special classrooms, the kids coming back into the programs, that's what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
And the reason I say that is because we have reading teachers in the pods teaching classes in the hall, you know, it's like the
Mhm.
hallway of the pod, as opposed to being on a cart. They could be on a cart, they could go to class as teachers have their prep. They
Mhm.
would go into the classroom that the teacher had their prep in.
Right.
But it's just so much more valuable. You don't lose instruction time when you have your own space.
Mhm.
And so they've chosen to work in the hallway, in the
Yeah,
pod
in the
area.
Pods, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I say we're above capacity, because all of the rooms, all of
Right.
the classrooms and the other pods are being utilized.
Right.
And so the team teachers have to be
Right.
there's 5 team teachers and there's only 4 classrooms, right?
I think that's one of the reasons why we have really tried to explain in as clear terms as we can to our constituents the concept of functional capacity.
Mhm.
When we talk about there is capacity from a standpoint of a place of assembly, which is how many people can you safely fit in the building in accordance with fire codes.
Mhm.
That's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is, given the programs, given the use, the function of the space, how many students can you fit in and not compromise your programs?
Right.
I mean, that's really why we tried to hit on that and really tried to drive that point home, because, you know, you could say, well, you know, you could fit 4 more classrooms in if you did away with art and music and those kinds of things. We know that has an impact on programming.
Mhm.
We just want to be very clear and very transparent with people that if we do go in that direction as we grow, and we know we're going to grow over the next 3 to 5 years, if we take no action, if we don't have a plan that we move forward, what's going to happen is there will be an impact on programming.
Mhm.
We are going to have to make some tough choices about, can we continue to have our in-district programs in our buildings?
Right.
Can we continue the commitment that we've made to art, music, and PE and those kinds of programs? It's so important. It makes it a little bit more of a complex discussion, but we have to have that
Right.
in order for us to really be transparent with people about the use of the space.
Mhm.
It's so important.
And what Londonderry has always prided itself on, when it had the ability to do this, was low class sizes.
Yep.
When we
Yep.
were growing faster than we could keep up with the number of students coming in. We had
Right.
35 students in a classroom at one point.
Right.
And that's not acceptable as far as allowing teachers to individually, work with the
Yeah.
children.
Right.
And so that does impact programming. That does, and so in order to become a better school district, that's why we slowed growth through, growth management. We also built up our infrastructure so that we had the capacity to bring, to deal with the kids that we had in our town. And now bringing these programs back into the schools, as you said, we're saving quite a bit of money.
And we're doing the right thing for our children.
Right.
We're not, we have programs, these are our children, they're our residents, their parents are taxpayers, and they're going to school in their communities.
Right.
We're not taking some of our most needy children and asking them to ride long distances on a
Right.
bus far away from home.
Right. Well, and that's the benefit of the programs, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So the budget passed with, little discussion.
It did. It was moved to the ballot. We're hoping that that support continues. We, as I said, we tried to be very prudent about the things for which we asked. Our staffing requests, as you know, we had no full-time staffing requests. We asked for some additional help with nursing and for some of our more medically fragile children, some guidance help. As we know, there are more and more complex issues confronting our children, confronting all of us. But,
Right.
some of our younger children are less able to deal with those. So that's really what we asked for in the way of help. We are going to have to redeploy staff and adjust, and we know that's going to be part of the equation. We're accepting of that fact,
Sure.
because we are flat right now, enrollment-wise. But if you look at the numbers the town has given us, and they're telling us that with the new developments coming online, we're going to pick up over 100 new students next year just from new developments alone. We know that there's a turnover of housing in town. So, some of that development happened a little slower than a lot of people projected. And as a result of that, our numbers have been flat at this point. But we really want to make sure that when they do go up, we are prepared. We don't want to get caught flat-footed. We want to think about that now.
So in the CIP, we've been talking about what a new elementary school someplace down the line,
Could be.
Could
Could be.
adding a second floor to Moose Hill and moving some, or even just building beyond, because you have more footprint, don't you,
We
on
do.
the first floor
We do.
available?
We have a number of different scenarios that we are playing out right now. We've got some help with that. This spring, we will be doing a report. One of the other issues that has come up with the space, with the facility use study group, was the impact we may realize if the town were to choose to add some sort of a program for full-day kindergarten. Right now, over 90% of the children in New Hampshire have access to some form of full-day kindergarten. We don't. So a discussion needs to be had. At this point, I think that's something that the community needs to discuss. Certainly the school board and people in town need to be able to talk about whether or not that's something that we're interested in developing, because it's quite costly. Also has a huge impact on our facility use. So those are all pieces of the puzzle that we want to introduce this spring and going forward as we talk about growth. There are a lot of possibilities for Moose Hill. And we want to make sure that the board is informed of those possibilities, and that the direction that they choose is the correct direction for town. So.
Right. So do you think that's going to happen sooner? I know you're doing this this report in the spring. In the CIP, we were out, I think, 2 or 3 years. So do you think we might need to move it up a little bit? It might be sooner than 2 or 3 years?
I think we want to be prepared to do that. Certainly this year, one of the things that happened with Moose Hill that was actually very fortuitous for us was the enrollment at Moose Hill for the regular education classrooms came in considerably lower than it had previously.
Mhm.
We had been between 275 and 285 students. We do projections every year, and what we were projecting was that would be consistent. And this year, for a reason that I don't have in front of me, we had 225 students enroll in kindergarten.
Okay. But-
So what that did is it bought us a little time.
Right. And
So
going forward, what do you have though?
that's one of the things that we literally watch kindergarten enrollment every day.
Right.
Right now, at this time, we have 228 students signed up for next year. At this time last year, we had 190.
Right.
So it's going to be, it's already higher.
Right.
But we pick up on the average about 25 students in August.
Mhm.
So, and then you've got a long time before August arrives.
Yeah.
So that we literally track it every day.
Right.
Another thing that we're doing with some really interesting conversations after deliberative session with a couple of community members who are in the business world, and they gave me some great ideas as far as different strategies that we might use to try to forecast
Mhm.
and really collect better data, whether it be working with the town through auto registrations and that sort of thing. Though, as we know, families have to self-report
Sure.
children. That's health information, so we can't make them tell us if they have children.
Sure.
But what we are talking about doing is going forward this summer and beyond, maybe developing some kind of an awareness campaign and coming up with a strategy to do a more accurate census,
Mhm.
so that we can pick up that information a little bit quicker. That said, it doesn't necessarily help with turnover of housing. Because
Right.
we know that
Right.
someone moves in, they move in.
That's right. And my 4-bedroom is going on the market next month, so
You may get a few phone calls.
yeah, I hope so. Hope I get a lot. Anyway, so we're looking forward to the election.
Yes.
We have 4 people running for 2 seats at the school board level, which is the first time to have a contest in a few years. Well,
Yeah.
actually, last year we had a good contest
Yeah.
too.
We have two for one this year for
Right.
school board,
Right.
and then the other 3 seats are unopposed.
Right.
Those are moderator and moderator treasurer and
Clerk.
I was going to say
Yeah, I
present
know.
company.
Well, I
So
make a joke that it's the only election I'll ever win is the one that I'm running unopposed for.
hey, we're grateful for your service.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about today?
I mean, I think you really hit the high points.
Yeah.
Certainly looking to get out, and I'm headed just in a few minutes here over to a PTA meeting at one of our schools. I've been making the rounds, been getting out to faculty meetings, and trying to talk. But certainly, if people have questions or things that they'd like clarified, they can feel free to call the
Right.
district office, and we'll be glad to try to clear up information.
One of the clear messages that I got at the deliberative session was that even though the proposed budget and the default budget are about $400,000 difference,
Mhm.
it's actually only $100,000 different. Because if the state hadn't changed the rules, the default would be 300,000, or I'm using
Yes.
round figures,
Right.
higher than it is right now. And
Right.
you're just asking for another 100,000, and in a $74 million budget is very, very little. What people should think about when they're voting is how important it is to have that differential.
There are a lot of things that are not included in the default that we would still have to
Pay for,
provide.
right.
Yeah. Yep.
Including busing.
Yeah, about $150,000 in busing.
Right.
So if we're on a default, we still have to pay that. But because of the new law in the way in which contracts are calculated in the default budget, we're not allowed to calculate the increase. So we're still going to have to pay that. So it'll come out of.
Right, with the
it'll come
exception
out,
of next year, if the school, and I know I'm not making any sense, Allied Health and the LEA contracts pass, those are allowed to be part of the default budget next year. You don't
That's
have
correct.
to, you don't have to hone that out.
Yeah, those are listed out.
Right,
We
this
call
year.
it Sanbornized. They're listed out for the
Right.
3 years, and
Right.
the voters are voting on all 3 years.
Right.
Mhm.
And the important thing, and I know we don't have too much more time, but the important thing about the LEA contract is that it includes, certainly it includes increases for the teachers, but it also includes that they're going to be working an extra day,
Yep,
that
right.
they are
Extra
going to
per-
be working 18 extra minutes per day.
Yeah, it's 16 minutes every day.
Oh, 16, okay.
And that's all instructional time.
Mhm.
That's not just, extra time, between classes or something. We do have 16 extra instructional minutes. We do have an extra day in professional development, which we're very grateful for the teachers' willingness to do that. High school is recalculating their schedule, and as a result of that, we'll be able to go to an hours-based calendar instead of a daily calendar, which helps us out with snow days and that kind of thing as well.
Right,
So, yeah.
because that way the first 5 snow days don't necessarily have to be made up.
Right.
And, which gives parents the ability to make plans and pretty much
True.
be set with those plans.
Right.
Not that that's a reason to vote for it, but I think
Right.
the important things are that their children will be getting 18 more minutes of instruction every single day,
Right.
that the teachers are going to be giving another day for professional development. What I'm excited about is, I'm excited about it in one sense, but it's been my selling point for my kids, for my students that I work with every day, about high school. You're going to love high school. You get an hour's lunch. You get, 52 minutes of lunch. Well, they're recalculating their lunch.
Right.
They're saying, kids are signing out after 30 minutes or 25 minutes because
Right.
that's what they're used to having for lunch. And they're going and getting extra help, or they're
Yeah.
going to the library, or they're going, instructional places. So why not use that time for instruction?
Exactly.
So at the high school, there's going to be a lot more minutes of instruction, not many
Sure.
more than that
Yeah.
18 per
Yeah.
day.
If
It's just
the-
kind of exciting.
Yeah, if it works out as we're working on different scenarios now, but it would be could be as many as 31 minutes a day of instructional time added on.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yep. And we're adding it on to the time when it's most productive,
Right,
which is the middle of the school year.
right. Middle of the school day, you mean?
Middle of the school day and the school year.
Okay.
If you think about the idea of a snow day, I would rather take a snow day and spread it out.
Oh, yeah.
And make it up that way than I would do it July.
Absolutely.
Not July, but
June.
June 26th.
Yeah, I'm not coming to work July 1st, sorry.
No. If you did, you'd be alone, right?
Right.
But in all seriousness, I think we all know as educators, June 20-something is not a
It's not a productive time,
Yep.
although we do try.
Work really hard at it.
We do.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
I, would encourage everybody to get out to vote March 12th. This will be airing before then. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And, it's important that everybody get out there to vote. And
Absolutely.
the warrant articles you can see, or they're ballot articles now. You can see if the school board are in favor of them. And, I think there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of vetting of these articles. So if the school board has approved those articles, it's important for our town. So
For sure.
thank you very much for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Until next time.